Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
You make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another exciting Tech Cat show here, broadcasting to you live from Hollywood, or Hollyweird, as some folks say. It's another very hot August day, and we are diving into another fantastic conversation with a thought-provoking creative individual. So here today on the Tech Cat show, we have Dayvid Iannaci, who I'm calling the designing entrepreneur. It's very crowded in here, so try not to step on any of the bodies.
Can you get off my shoe?
Yeah, exactly. So Dayvid has a long history in the interactive space, having been involved in the development of online content way before Al Gore even claimed the beginning of the internet.
I invented Al Gore, actually.
He invented Al Gore. And he's been a creative director for large and small agencies and an entrepreneur building a whole gaming platform. And now has his own agency where he's pushing the edge, the boundaries of digital content exploration. And so I wanted to really talk about a little bit about your background, but then get into what you're doing now, because every time we sit down and talk, you're always playing with the coolest, latest thing. And then I'll turn around and you're on your computer for 2 seconds, and then you show me something that wasn't there before. So you're this really interesting combination of technical prowess, but also a designer, which, you know, is rare. And a hell of a nice guy, if I may say so,
Boy,
Dave.
Thank you.
So give us a little bit of your background, because I think in the digital space and the technology space, what we're finding is everyone comes from this really eclectic world. So tell us about your background.
Well, it's interesting what you say as far as like the kind of multitude of skills that I've gathered, and I basically lucked into those. Way before the web, I used to write for an online text-based role-playing game, which is basically a lot like World of Warcraft, except there were no graphics. It was all text, and it was done over modem really slowly.
Oh, wow.
And you had to have a Unix shell account, which the actual public internet at that point was a page of people would be
right.
online.
It was all like university stuff.
Exactly. It was military and university.
Right.
And as far as civilians were concerned, I mean, I had a really unique user ID because none of them were taken. They were all available.
I remember my roommate was worked at a library connected to a university, and she would tell me about email, and I would be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah,
you know?
they would be using like Pine or some Unix-based thing at that point. And you used to have to know so much just to navigate the internet. And these games were pay to play. For instance, there was a game that was the predecessor to the one I wrote for on the GE network called Genie. Well, businesses used that network during the day. So if you wanted to play during like peak hours, it was something like $8 an hour. And remember, this is like 1992, so that was money.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that was money. I mean, like I knew people that like maxed their credit cards and then went bankrupt because of that.
Wow.
You know. But anyway, bottom line was you had to know a lot of things in order to even navigate the internet back then. And so I was always creative. I studied architecture and I always knew how to draw. But in this regard, I was learning programming. But I was being creative at the same time. I was writing storylines and all this stuff for the game. And so when the web came out, that was basically word processing back then.
Right.
We used to have the same type of markup as HTML just to get something to print properly on a dot matrix printer.
Yeah, you had to know like what to put in front of the letter, behind the letter.
Exactly.
I remember when I was temping. This was, it was like 15 years ago or something, because you and I were very young when we started our professional lives.
I was 4.
I was 4 too. Yeah. And we both use a lot of moisturizer. Mm-hmm. So you were already dabbling right away in sort of edgy communication tools and platforms.
Well, and the thing is, it was for entertainment. It literally was. I mean, here's a funny insight: is that at the time I got a computer that was loaned to me by a stockbroker who won it.
Yeah.
In some like incentive program for selling a certain amount of stock, and it was on loan, and I thought it would look cool in my house. I didn't know how to use it really, although I'd had computers when I was a kid, but the kind you hook up to your TV, right?
Right.
And so I totally broke this thing. I like, as far as the operating system is concerned,
You just dug in.
Oh, yeah, I not only dug in, but I deleted the boot sector, and it wouldn't work anymore, and I'm freaking out because it was like a $3,500 computer, which
At the time was a big deal.
I was a waiter. That was like my spending money for the year.
Right.
And so I got on the phone with Packard Bell, I think was the company that owned it, and they walked me through rebuilding the operating system, but I got it. Because when I was a kid, I used to pick up these stapled together computer magazines with basic programs in them, and you'd literally just type them word for word into the computer, and they would do something. But what it did is it made me understand logic, right? So,
and you had an affinity for it. Your mind works that way.
I think that's right. I'm lucky in the way that I'm kind of autodidactic. I just teach myself all of this stuff.
Is that what autodidactic
That's
means?
what
I thought it was something dirty.
No, it can be. It just depends on what you're teaching yourself, right?
Okay. But yourself is the operative word.
Correct.
Okay.
Auto there.
Auto, yeah.
But look, that being said, I definitely had an affinity for it, and good thing, because there were 0 classes. I learned HTML from a primer.
Right.
It was literally just a list of commands. There were 2 books in the bookstore on internet development, and it was one was on Perl and one was on the Pascal programming language, or something
stuff that would just go over my head even now
and be completely useless.
Right.
So I was really lucky, and I started doing websites for people for $500 for small companies.
Right.
And then I got a job at a legit web development spot called ahhh, which was one of the first e-commerce sites.
Well, is that connected to Sky Mall, or it was its own thing?
No. It was actually kind of shady. It was kind of a multi-level marketing deal.
Yeah.
And they advertised massive on the radio about how to market your business on the internet, and they would give you 2 websites built template websites long before this was a thing. Right. They had a team of knuckleheads with this thing called...
It was all day glow coloring.
Oh, God. It was all centered on...
And flashing.
With tiled backgrounds and spinning hard... Yeah, that exact trip.
Early web. Oops.
And they would sell these seminars, business seminars, for $3,500, and you'd get 2 websites for doing it. And they were wildly successful with this. And eventually sold to Excite. Remember the search engine Excite?
Yeah.
For bucks. But they were one of the first internet companies to go public. And what it did is it really kind of started to teach me about leveraging this form of communication. The world, really didn't know about it at this point.
Right.
Yet.
So you were starting to be aware that this could be a much bigger thing on multiple levels. I mean, when you and I met, you were the creative director at McCann, or MRM, which was the name of the agency, and you were the guy that everyone would come to do anything new.
Right.
Besides the basic stuff that the clients were asking for, which was web dev, create our sites and some commerce or whatever. But you were always the guy that they would say, could you do this? And you would just go into your room and work with your guys and come out with something hours later. And I was always like, how does he do that? Were you always just in all your jobs learning new platforms? I mean, new software programs constantly? And you still are.
Yes. Today, I mean, I am not kidding. I recently bought a 21-hour video course on subsurface scattering on a 3D program I've been using.
Oh, I don't know what that means.
It would be the most boring thing you've ever heard. It's
but it turned you on?
Oh, I love it. And I'm watching. I'm 7 hours in right now, and it's literally a guy with kind of a Ben Stone voice. He's and looking at a panel of parametric numbers, and he's and then you put in 3.5 meters. Well, no, that's too much. Let's try 2.1.
So, but when do you, so just talking more basically, you were the first guy to ever really tell me about Oculus Rift.
Okay.
And you showed me what it was doing. And in fact, you came over the house and you put the headsets on, and I fell off my chair because I was on a roller coaster ride. Mm-hmm. And then you were the first one to talk about drones, and you always have the stuff. So how do you, besides the work you're doing for your clients, are you just always looking at everything new, buying new stuff, just playing with it? How do you know what's going to be real and what's just going to be a fad?
So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a nerd tweaker, right?
Yeah.
So I buy stuff that I like, which doesn't suck, right? I read a lot all day, every day. I'm either working, reading, or watching some sort of tutorial on some of the many software programs that I
Right.
use. And that goes back to kind of my earlier point,
Yeah.
is that I started with all of these different things, and I learned programming, but I also had to be creative. And I was kind of, a mile wide and an inch deep in 1993. But over the last 22 years, I've learned...
Remember, David started when he was 4.
That's right.
So you're very young.
I'm very young. But I've learned so many things that are actually viable now. So
Right.
That's part of the fun, is as a consultant, I get to do pretty much anything. If they need visual effects or 2D or 3D or logo design or audio design or animation or, previs or, actual photography or web design or just ideas, like there are
all
just
comes.
so many different things I can do. So,
And so now you have your own agency,
uh-huh.
the Ghost Agency. And tell us about the Ghost Agency. Like, what's your focus there?
So Ghost, when I left MRM, there were a lot of traditional ad agencies that were asking me to build teams for them. And, they were like direct marketing agencies that were being dinged for not having interactive departments. And I did. I tried that a couple times, and a lot of money was spent. And because I know so many people, I've been doing it so long.
But you're young.
But I'm young. I know people from, the nursery.
Moisturizer. Anyway, go ahead.
So I would gather these teams and put them together, and then kind of hand the reins over to these, old folks that had no idea what it is that these guys were really doing.
Right. Because it's a cultural thing, too, right?
Well, that's exactly my point. Is they would then immediately run the entire team into the ground. Everyone would leave. Everyone would be pissed off, and it would end in tears.
Because there was no, they weren't integrating the operations into the larger sort of skill set of the agency, or what was the problem you were hitting?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors, but the big one, in my opinion, is that I think this is really tricky work. I think it's tough, and I think you have to love it to be good at it. I really do.
So even the people, so if I were a traditional agency right now and I'm getting all this pressure to have digital capabilities, you're saying that I can't just buy a digital agency because unless I get it, it's a different business model. The costs are different, the skill sets are different, how you work and demonstrate the content is different. All of that is really different, right?
Well, I think that's exactly right. And you can just throw money at the problem.
Right.
And that can be a wildly expensive
Endeavor,
proposition,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you also can luck out. If you do, say, acquire a company, hopefully it's somebody who loves it and who really is kind of knee deep in this stuff at all times. And now, look, that being said, it's gotten a lot easier. But the technology's kind of coming full circle a little bit. And now,
In what sense?
so the Internet of Things. You've heard this. You've heard
Yes.
this term a few times. So.
And what does it mean when you say?
All it means in like its simplest form is that actual stuff talks to each other and uses the internet.
Okay, so everyday products now are talking to each other, are all connected.
Correct.
So we're connected to the internet right now.
Right. But as opposed to things that we've done traditionally in our career as interactive developers, which were intangible. Most of the stuff that I created through my entire career is not only intangible, but gets stale in about 18 months.
Right, you built it over there and it's done.
Right.
You baked it, it's sealed, and you deliver it.
And then people ask you for like your resume, and I've been doing this 22 years, and I'm like, well, it's pretty.
But
as
you're
long as
very
my
young.
arm, I'm very young.
Yes.
And I can provide a list that's just ridiculously long of stuff that I did.
Yeah.
If you want to see the stuff that I did for Nissan at Chiat Day in 2003, you're not going to be impressed.
Right.
It's 2003 web development.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And it was really edgy back then, and it looks terrible now.
Right. You constantly have to outdo yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, you know what I think about it is like a baseball team. Like, yeah, you can win a game, but you have to win the next one too.
Right, you can never relax. Right. I think that is the quintessential difference in this interactive digital world, is that if you're on the more traditional side and you write a great campaign and there's a great broadcast spot, people 10 years later will say, oh yeah, I remember that spot. And it's still okay because it's kind of this base acceptance of the ordinary, but in our world, you continuously have to outdo yourself.
Right.
Which is kind of stressful.
No question. But I love that part.
That's the exciting part.
Yeah,
too.
it's definitely part of it, and it keeps it exciting for me because, I mean, I think I've probably done 1,500 websites.
Wow.
Maybe. You know what I mean? Something ridiculous.
And on every, there's new platforms all the time. I know when I sat down with you for a client a while back, and we were talking about WordPress or Drupal or whatever, and you had like 10 other ones I'd never heard of that you were recommending. So, you're always being an anthropologist, right?
I mean, I try, but at the same time, my biggest resource are the people that I trust, right? So, I've got the same internet outlets that everyone else has, from Reddit on down, for new technology, and Reddit is great, by the way, if you unsubscribe from all of the main subs and then pick ones that interest you,
topics that interest you,
and that are smaller communities.
It's
and aren't just full
it's
of,
like silently hot Reddit. It's like people are really into it again, and it's it's showing up in the strangest places, and people are leveraging it. Like Jerry Seinfeld has a whole thing on the comedy Cars and Drinking Coffee in Cars or whatever that is, his show.
I love that show.
Yeah, but that has a whole Reddit thing too that he speaks on. So it's really interesting, a mainstream guy like him using that platform.
Oh yeah, I mean, just from like the AMA, which is the Ask Me Anything sub.
Yeah.
Like everybody goes on there. You know what I mean? Like if the president has something to say, he'll come on there and answer questions.
And do you know that he's going to come on?
Yes, they have a schedule in that sub.
So you
I can't believe I'm talking about Reddit.
We need I can't believe I'm talking about this sound effect when
Yeah.
you get a chance. There we go.
There we go. But so that's just one set of resources, and that's a very large, very active community.
But do you have to be, this is the thing that fascinates me about you, and I've never said this to you out loud, but I think about this all the time. Like, it's very rare to find someone who's left and right brained, right? Who's business centric and creative, who understands technology, and then who can also implement pipeline to get the stuff made. That's very rare, and you seem to kind of have all of it kind of juggling around. Do you find that you need to be a business guy and a creative right now to navigate?
Well, I know plenty of people that are one or the other.
Right.
I do need to be
Both.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just kind of, I guess, the way I was built.
Right.
And it all comes from my enthusiasm. Really, like I love what I do. I love the space that I'm working in. I'm really excited to try to kind of bring brands to new places, to get them to know about this stuff and to actually use it and see the way that it's implemented.
So are brands coming to you, some of your clients, and saying what's new, or do you bring it to them? Like, how does that relationship work?
So you know what? This goes back to the other question you had about Ghost, where I was talking about traditional agencies. So get this. So once they started back to running these teams into the ground.
Yeah.
I decided to kind of take my favorite members of the interactive development community and white label their services and just start installing them like ghostwriters. And that's why I made the Ghost Agency.
Okay, got it. So virtual teams.
That was kind of
that you would manage.
Right. That I would manage. I would bring these people in, and I would make sure that, I was attached to a project, and we priced it with a blended rate so that, agencies could mark us up, and they could either take all the credit for the work if they wanted to.
Or bring you in.
Or bring us in.
Right.
And we found that, we didn't really care. Just give us some money, right?
Yeah.
But we found that it was actually better if they were transparent, because they could put me in the room with the client, and I would work with them directly.
Right.
Instead of them kind of presenting my work or our work or whatever.
And they still own the client relationship, because you don't want to deal with that management piece. That's, a whole nother thing.
Right. Well, we do have our own clients. We have In-N-Out Burger, for instance. We're the interactive agency of record. And so it's awesome. They're wonderful.
So you do their website, and then do you do like any other digitally things for them?
Mobile apps and lots of endeavors. We actually just quietly launched a new store of premium items.
There's premium hot dogs.
No, it's not food. It's merchandise. So
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so their merchandise is actually like, hot all over the world.
Oh, is it really?
Like In-N-Out T-shirts in Japan.
No kidding. So you've launched an e-commerce site for them?
Yeah, and of all new, nice watches and cross pens and all nice new stuff.
And
it's a new brand called Vault 48.
What's it called?
Vault 48.
Vault 48 is their brand. And are you using any cool new platform for the commerce? Is it like video? Or is it just pretty standard?
It's pretty standard, but it is up to date. It's all done with Magento backend. So it's got all of the mobile hooks and all of the different things, and that's one of the.
And Magento is a web platform.
Magento is it's a web platform, and it's an e-commerce platform.
Okay.
But it's one of the newer ones, and it's more modular. It's a lot easier, than a lot of the traditional
God,
ones.
your brain just must be so big. I need a big brain sound now.
That's it. That's it. Now, if I had a nickel.
Because I got to a point, I was, doing a lot of, when we met, and I was the, internal digital evangelist at McCann and Interpublic and running my lab, I was always, into video software because telling stories and content. But I got to a point where I couldn't learn a new software platform. Like, I just got done with that. I couldn't do it. My brain was done. And then I became less interested in being the person to do the stuff and more interested in the strategy and in managing people, but not doing it. But you're still hands-on.
Well, from time to time, look, yes. The question is the answer to that question is absolutely, definitively yes. Especially, some of the stuff I do with like our sister company over at Sci Futures. I do so much. Like, I get involved from the UX and UI perspective.
So interface
And user experience. And then that kind of ties in and dovetails into design, which means then I've got people calling me demanding button graphics,
right,
and things along those lines. And it's been a long time since I've been barked at to like make a button.
Right.
Coming from being a VP,
right,
group creative director, and having 30 people under me in the org chart,
right,
and then being barked at to get me that damn button.
No, it's hysterical.
It's tough, but as a vendor, that's what you got to do.
Right.
You know. So one of the reasons why I do it that way is because I've developed all of that, and at some point you have to delegate these things in order to be effective. But when I'm the most familiar with the entire process,
right,
it's much faster for me to just do it.
Right.
Instead of if I explain that to an art director, have them give it to me, and then look at it, redline it, whatever, I could just make the button.
Right. And you're rezzing up and rezzing down in terms of staff based on projects. So you're
All
a
the
real
time.
modern agency consultancy, in that you could have 10 people at one time, or you could have 20, or you could have 5. It's just what the project needs. And that seems to be what I'm hearing more and more.
And I'll give you one of my big lessons with that is I actually have learned a long time ago that I don't really waste my time trying to save money on like cheap labor or trying to go overseas and that kind of stuff. I actually pay really high level guys, sometimes that are overqualified for what they need to do. And I make less money on their blended rate, but the work is done really well.
And you get called back again.
I usually get called back. We keep our clients for a long time. We love our clients. They love us. We don't just take on any client willy-nilly. We kind of evaluate it for the right fit and decide at that point. Yeah.
That's how you go. So let's talk about Oculus Rift, because I'm telling you, you were the first kid on the block for me. I mean, I had kind of heard about it. I had seen the occasional article about it in our geeky newsletters and things that we all read, but you were really the first person who said to me, I'm developing on this platform.
I just got the version 2.
So
2 days ago.
What does that mean? Like how did Oculus Rift come into your life, and where do you see it going?
Okay. This goes back to the 90s. I was actually I was a professional.
Because this is 4D, right? Or do we call it that?
It's VR.
It's VR.
Yeah,
okay.
it's VR. So I was a professional video game player in the 90s also.
Another part of your life I don't know about. We need a video game sound effect now. And when you have a chance.
I don't think we have it.
Okay, go ahead.
That's perfect. That was exactly how it sounded.
The way I played. That's how it sounded.
So
Bricks. I played Bricks.
This was a game called Quake.
Okay.
Coincidentally, one of the creators of Quake was a guy named John Carmack from id Software, who just happens to be the CTO for Oculus.
Oh, okay.
He left id Software for Oculus. Now, in the 90s, the technology wasn't there yet. I mean, I don't know if you remember what those big headsets looked like, and there were these kind of like pods that you would stand in, and they would even some even had little pressure plates that would vibrate when you got hit.
Yeah.
But there was a real problem with motion sickness.
Oh, people getting nauseous.
Really bad, and a lot of that had to do with 2 things. One, it had to do with depth of field, because you couldn't have depth of field in this virtual environment. Everything in 120-degree viewing spectrum was in focus, and that's really weird for your eyes. And your eyes,
too much. It's
totally.
Too much. Okay.
And then also there was delay when you'd move your head from side to side. It would lag, And that also completely throws off your inner ear. And it was basically just the vomit comet, right?
Well, because the science fiction version of all of this is that, and there have been so many movies that show people going into a room, putting on something almost holodeck-like, you know, submerging your physical existence into a whole new reality. But you'd had to wear something, and you had to go to a place and plug in.
Right.
You know, it wasn't this simple thing you could do.
Right.
Now it's moving in this.
It's you know, basically this new version is basically production ready. It's certainly not the only one out there. There's another one called Viraze, VRAZE, which is a 3D printed housing that you just slide a phone into.
Yeah.
It's got 2 lenses. Now, coincidentally, if you look at the teardown of the Oculus Rift, the second one, it's a Samsung phone. It's like a Galaxy phone.
Now, what do you mean by tear down? What
If
is
you
it?
actually tear, okay, so if you're a nerd tweaker like
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
you get things, you take them apart, and then
Okay.
you put them back together.
When you say tweaker, what does that mean?
I mean, I sit there and I like tweak out on an Arduino board and like plug little LEDs into it and figure out a program to make them run in a certain
So
sequence.
you're not talking about the Miley Cyrus dancing.
No, that's twerking. That's twerking, and I'm not talking about cooking meth.
Okay, right. That's another
That's
one.
another one, and
Yeah.
those are tweakers.
Which would be interesting to combine all 3 of those things.
You know, I'll bet you could twerk really fast
on meth while doing your
cooking,
computer.
correct, and while tweaking out on
In a
on
VR
there. Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is like I just like to tinker. I think tinker is actually the right word.
Okay, gotcha.
Our Arduino or Raspberry Pi is another thing that's really in part of the whole like Internet of Things right now.
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi is actually a little tiny circuit board.
Okay.
Do you remember? You may or may not remember this, but way back in the day, Radio Shack used to have this like 501 board. It was a big board
Like
of
a
circuits.
modular thing.
And
right.
exactly, and you could connect this circuit and make the little speaker do something, or
Right.
you could make
sort
this
of
thing
the
light up.
Legos of like consumer tech.
Yeah, it was kind of like that.
prosumer.
Yeah. And so imagine that with today's technology. That's a little like motherboard and processor. It's called a Shield. You plug a USB connection into it, and then you can download all these scripts to do things
That are pre-made, that are pre-written.
well, and then you can kind of. And that's what I mean by tinkering, and then you can kind of work it to your own.
So you can make your own robot, or you could do
Exactly.
or you could like turn your house on or off,
Yep.
or you know.
I've got a friend of
I
mine.
want to freak my husband out and do something really
My friend
crazy.
Rob does this kind of stuff all the time.
in his house.
In his house, he'll build a self-balancing robot on one wheel that has a motion detector on it, and when you walk by, it'll charge at you.
Oh, that's so funny.
And he'll leave it like for the girl he's dating in the morning to wake up to, things like that.
And will it say things to her?
Well, he can make it do that, but I think just the miniature charging surprise morning robot is enough.
Is enough
Yeah.
to keep their relationship spontaneous. Because there was an announcement today or yesterday about a hotel chain adding butler robots. A Loft,
cool.
I think.
Okay.
Internet of Things article talking about just now you're starting to see businesses move into that space to really impact. It's a PR halo, thing, but also to actually have a business purpose and leisure.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's early, but that's the point, right?
Right.
I mean, that's why it's cool. But eventually, yeah, I mean, when you start to think about even just my smart home stuff,
Yeah.
I've got, I use Z-Wave, which I have a little router that attaches to my router at home, which talks to my thermostat and all of my lights, all of my light switches, and all of my outlets.
Attached things to all those things?
Well,
Z-Wave protocols and things?
I replaced my light switches and my
To make them
thermostat.
work with that.
Correct.
Okay.
With that frequency. And,
Okay.
and to be a little technical, each one is not just a receiver; it's also a transmitter. So every one that you add increases the size of your network.
I think that you're going to get a lot of dinner party invitations after this show because I think everyone's going to want you in their house.
It's kind of like being a doctor in that way. Like,
Yeah.
what is this rash? Do you see this? Like, it's kind of like, can you take a look at this over here?
So do you think everyone will become like you are, obviously not replace you or anything like that, but I just mean, is this new generation coming up? Are they all going to be programming their homes themselves? Will we need professionals to do it?
They're not going to have to be. It's, think about the television, right? Especially our TV or our telephone. You pick it up and you use it. You don't have to learn wiring. You don't have to learn how to program it. You have to learn how to push the buttons.
Everything is sort of Mac friendly, like plug and
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the Nest the Nest thermostat is really cool. You
Right.
notice how it's intelligent, it's predictive,
It's pretty.
it's pretty. You know, it's also gathering a ton of information about you.
Right, because it's Google-licious.
Correct.
Right. Do you have a Nest or you have a different Z-Wave?
I have a different one. Mine's
a different solution.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think mine's a Honeywell.
I mean, but your background to me is exactly where I think a lot of this Internet of Things is going, which means that, I mean, in terms of there has to be a strategy and a business model behind the product. It has to, obviously, technology has to be sophisticated, but there also has to be this sexy product design. Like, design is a big part of this, right? So you do need that rounded skill set, it seems, in today's world.
It's funny that you say that because there's, I have, because of the whole thing that I did with Michael Eisner and Eric Schmidt.
Oh, yeah, you got to tell everyone about this because this is crazy, too.
Well, the thing that's crazy about it is this Kim Kardashian game is almost exactly what we made, and it's pulling in $700,000 a day.
So
or something.
I'll just give a quick background on this. You basically built a game, an online game, that got funded by
Michael Eisner, and then Eric Schmidt's.
So Mr. Disney and Mr. Google.
Well, Mr. Google, it wasn't him personally. It was his innovation fund called Tomorrow Ventures. They came on board, and the Hearst Corporation came in, and we had some showrunners, a lot of Hollywood people. We had Marcy Carsey, and there was there were a lot of big players. Sony Pictures had entered into a $1 million ad deal with us on this game, and this was back in 2010 when Farmville had just started.
Right,
on
so people were
Facebook.
really looking at virtual monetization.
Casual gaming.
Casual gaming online.
And social gaming is really what the advent of that was. And so we thought, hey, I had this idea in my backyard of like a Hollywood-based one of those where you start as a D-list actor and try to make your way up. And Michael loved it. He caught wind of it through my friend Sean Fanning, this is the kid who wrote Napster.
Yeah, and it's so funny when you say my friend Sean Fanning.
Yeah, no, it's I mean he's just Sean, but I have
Yeah.
to kind of quantify that sometimes because he had just had an exit where Michael invested in one of his companies and did really well, and so Michael caught wind of this and decided he wanted to fund it. And we were like, wow, what a perfect partner. And he was a great partner. He can really move the needle as far as entertainment is concerned. But we were, pretty unlucky with just kind of one tiny little switch that Facebook made right before we launched our game, which was, I don't know if you remember when Farmville was out and everyone would ask for help, like, my chicken escaped, I need help, right?
Yeah.
And they would post it all
Like
over
rules
your
of
wall.
engagement, right.
So right before we launched, Facebook made this tiny little change. And what that change was you only saw those messages now if you had that game installed.
Oh, okay.
So it immediately went from an onboarding tool to get new customers or new users to a retention tool to get old customers to re-engage. Which is awesome if you have 100 million people.
But when
like
you're starting out,
Zynga did at
right.
the time. When we were starting out, then we were having to pay for those.
Right.
And it was costing us about $1 per person, and they were spending about $0.25. So that doesn't work. If those are free people,
Right.
and there are millions and
They're
millions
always
of them, $0.25 is
messing with
awesome.
their API after you've built something for their platform.
Well,
we need an I'm annoyed sound if you could find one.
The Noid from Domino's.
Yeah, there you go.
There,
okay,
yeah, I
that's
like
something.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So, but that game attracted a lot of attention. You got Sony interested. People were leveraging it. And then what happened? Did you decide, okay, because of this big change, we have to?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's not viable, right? Spend
Yeah.
$1, and then you think about that they had to use Facebook credits. So this lesson is about piggybacking on someone else's network, right? So we had to follow their rules. We had to use Facebook credits. So now we're looking at $1.33 we had to make for every user that we onboarded.
Right.
And they would give us about $0.25 over their lifetime. Would have been amazing if they were free users.
Right.
If you had 100
Just
million.
mess with the business model. It's like them pulling Messenger out. I just can't.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
bad.
that's bad.
It's so annoying. So
And the kids hate Facebook, by the way.
yeah, no, I know that.
But I think they hate it because their parents were on it.
I think
Yeah.
I know our generation who are very young. still uses it a lot, but mostly not for business, mostly
No.
just for personal celebration.
I keep business well away from there.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I do post some industry things, but I don't depend on that.
Yeah.
You know, I use it mostly to just show endless pictures of my daughter.
Yeah, that's what I do. Pictures of my daughter and jokes and pictures of
Really neat
Yeah.
pictures. That's the other thing that you are is a great photographer, and that you are one of those people that is always sourcing the most interesting internet photos, like these viral, crazy, I've never seen this before thing. So how do you find that stuff?
That's just
That's like part of your brand
Yeah,
now.
that's just part of rabbit holing on the internet. Like
Yeah.
I just go deep, you know, and
while
some-
you're
yeah.
while you're twerking or whatever it is.
But we can, okay.
Well, I have a question for you about what you segueing into our next segment, which is the top trend segment. Segment. We don't
That's
have
all
that
right.
sound
You got
effect
it.
lined
That
up
was
today.
perfect.
What do you think right now is a top trend in technology? I mean, is it Oculus? Is it, Minecraft? What is a really hot thing right now that brands should be jumping aboard, consumers are leveraging, the tech is there? Like what's really turning you on right now?
Okay, so that is a big question, and it's there's no one answer, right? It's different for every industry and for every client. But like you mentioned, Minecraft.
Yeah.
My wife is an educator, and she's really looking at gamifying learning.
Oh,
And just
interesting.
using
Okay.
Minecraft.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
and Minecraft, those guys are just awesome about that, and there are educational licenses for all that. And she's looking at stuff, which, by the way, I mean, you guys should chat just because it's also right up your alley. And
Yeah.
you guys will have fun. But so that's like one part of it. In the education space, I think gamifying education. The old school way that we learned. My daughter just started kindergarten.
Yes.
And I'm watching her kind of formally enter her education process. And it made me kind of remember all of mine.
Right.
And it was all about memorization and purging that memorization.
Yeah.
And it was, largely useless, but more importantly, it was really, really boring.
Right.
Even stuff that I would be interested in.
Is it different for her now? Is it computer oriented? Does she have an iPad in kindergarten? I mean,
Well, she's had an iPad since
she was born.
one.
Yeah.
And as a result, she learned the alphabet before she could speak.
right.
And learned how to read, but not phonetically working out like GOR means gore, but she could identify the word gorilla at 18 months old and say
Right.
Galella. Like, that's
Right.
amazing.
Right.
And would be bored with things like the picture of the little baby on her yogurt. She'd
Yes.
be bummed out because it didn't move when she touched it.
Right. The same thing with my daughter, who's friends with your daughter, and I just remember the classic thing of her walking up to the TV and expecting it to be the iPad, or magazines being too still.
Yeah.
So interesting. So their brains are being wired differently.
I am shocked at how fast they're learning things. Like, she's on her second day of kindergarten. They're trying to teach them even and odd
Oh,
concepts.
interesting.
Like,
Okay.
that's pretty heavy duty stuff.
Yeah.
But these kids get it, and that goes back to your other question about like what is this generation going to have to know?
Yeah.
They're going to just intuitively know. Like the iPad to our kids is going to be some weird, antiquated old, like the way we look at some old wood TV cabinet with a little screen in the middle.
Right.
And two knobs.
The tube TVs.
Exactly,
Right. The big TV, or the old Polaroid cameras,
or transistor radios or anything along those lines.
You were telling me about Minecraft again, because if you haven't ever played Minecraft, you just know it's a thing, and you're seeing now, of course, all the marketing and collateral and products that are coming out of it. But you were telling me about some behaviors that were happening. So basically, at its core, Minecraft is people building worlds, right?
So yeah, okay, that's a great. It's such a weird and simple thing.
Yeah.
I mean, especially so you start out in Minecraft. If the first time you come in, first of all, it's terrible graphics. It looks like
It's blocky.
it's not just blocky; it's super low resolution, right? So what it looks like is back in 1995, it looks like you took the game Quake and turned all the textures down so that your computer would run faster, which was something we actually used to have to do. And it's called turning the MIP mapping down. And so it looks like
Geek alert!
I needed those extra 12 frames a second for that 1 millisecond of Twitch,
Right.
so that I would live versus die against the other guy. Anyway, so bottom line is it's really blocky, but the reason why is because it's created an entire world around you. It's generated an entire world called a chunk.
Okay.
And that world has all these different materials in it, right? And and there are living things that have their own intelligence.
Is it like Sims in that sense?
In that sense,
okay.
it's just like The Sims, except that, it's not really human-centric as much as it's environmental.
Okay.
So it's for mining originally. It's called Minecraft. And you start out with nothing, right? And then you go walk over to a tree and beat on a tree with your hand until a piece of wood falls off.
And that's your thing.
And then you put that in, when you open your inventory, you have 4 little squares. And you can drop that in there. If you drop that in one of the squares, it says, okay, now you have kind of birch wood panels. And once you take that, if you put 2 of those together in the 4 squares, you can make a stick. Or if you put 2 sideways, you can make
it sounds like
a
so
plate.
much work.
It's, you know what it is? It's like alchemy. You mix these things. And then,
I was going to call you that, the alchemist, because I think about you like that too.
Well, this is why kids love it, because they get to experiment with all these different, basically primitive shapes, right? So if you make a stick, and if you take a piece of coal and put it on the top and a stick on the bottom, you have a torch.
So kids love it, even non-techie kids, or if there even is such a thing as a non-techie kid now, but kids love it because they're putting things together and making things.
Think Legos, but they're Legos that they don't come pre-built. You don't just get the one with the 6 sides and the one with the 2. You make it.
That's so cool.
And by the way, you can get really advanced. You end up with houses that you've built yourself with glass walls that you made the glass by harvesting sand from the beach and putting it in the oven.
So they're learning chemistry.
Correct.
That's really cool.
It's amazing.
So and what's the average age on Minecraft now?
Well, I think it's from 6 years old to 45.
Wow. So it's like a lot of those multiplayer games. And are people doing it together, or I know on like Twitch TV they watch each other?
Yep. So it's definitely collaborative.
Okay.
There are huge. There are people that are Game of Thrones fans that have built all of Westeros, the entire map.
Get out, really?
We're talking
just
like
on their own without any help?
And we're talking like, if you understand how much work that is, think about each one of those blocks as
where do they find the
pixel.
time?
Well, that's what they do.
So is it like all these other gaming environments where you're going to see tournaments, people are making a living, are brands jumping onto Minecraft?
Well, they definitely are. It's not really a competitive sport. There's not, you know what I mean? There's no real competition in Minecraft unless it were to be something. Think of it like sandcastle building.
Right.
Right? Like, there's probably a couple competitions out there.
People will get ribbons.
Exactly. But more than anything, people do it for the gratification of actually building it because that's their thing. Right? Think of them like model train builders.
Right.
And I mean the people that are very serious about it.
It's like, right, so you get status in your community from building something great.
And you can get intense with that stuff. Like Minecraft, we're spending a lot of time on Minecraft, but we can move off in a second. But like, for instance, you can build an entire powered rail system that has forks.
The
and
behavior
it's
is interesting.
Nuts.
But you were telling me, so on Twitch TV, which is what used to be Justin TV's thing, which is basically capturing people playing games.
Yes.
And then other people chatting. You were telling me about this phenomena that people cut and paste chat.
Copy pasta.
Yeah, what is that? Copy pasta.
That's what it's called. Okay. This is a really weird phenomenon. You got to check this out.
You know this stuff. It's just crazy.
I actually watch Twitch TV. I'm still a gamer to this day, and lately I've been playing a game from Blizzard, who are the guys that did World of Warcraft and StarCraft, and the biggest games
all the big
ever.
ones, right?
They're amazing. They're perfect. Amazing angels.
You sound in love.
I am. Blizzard. They have a card game, like a casual card game, which is all based on characters from their World of Warcraft game, and it's kind of like chess. Think about it; it's just like that. Like you've got a move and a counter move, and you got to think 3 moves ahead. It's really fast. Like they're 5 or 10 minute games.
And that's what you're playing?
It's really the only thing I have time to play. But yes,
because you're running a business, you have 3 kids, and you're all over the place.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot of time.
I don't know anybody has time to do this stuff, but
I really wish I didn't have to sleep. That would be cool.
Sleeping gets in the way.
And there the meth thing comes again.
Then the meth thing would step in and help us keep going.
It's looking better every minute.
So the copy pasta. So people are copying other people's conversations.
Okay, so this is kind of a.
I've thought about this for days when you mentioned it.
This
I
is
was
a really
like,
weird
God, people are
phenomenon.
so
All right,
weird.
check this out. So, let's say you've got a famous guy that's streaming his stuff, and he's playing
famous in the gaming,
famous
Minecraft
in the game. Yeah,
world,
and
whatever.
what I mean by that is he's got
Followers.
30 million people have viewed his stuff. He's got 26,000 people at any given time watching his stream live. Right.
Which
And
brands would love.
brands
to get
would
hold
love,
of. Yeah.
and they do, and he'll play ads for those, and that's one of the ways that he makes revenue. He also makes revenue for the company, Justin TV or Google, whoever happens to own it. Now, here's the thing: the kids all run ad block. None of them see it, and they would rather sit there. And this is important to know: they would rather sit there and look at a blank black screen for 30 seconds than watch an ad.
No kidding.
Yep.
So in that environment, ads don't work.
They do not work. As a matter of fact, ads are bad for a brand, and I'll tell you what.
In that environment,
When
yeah.
it comes to blocking what I want to see, you're standing in the way. Like, are you telling me that? And it used to be like, now a word from our sponsors, and we were cool with that as a kid. Where they,
Right.
like, and whatever Tide would come in.
So this huge phenomena then, brands can't take advantage of?
Well, they absolutely can, but they just can't do it in the traditional way.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
And get what I'm laying down here,
Yeah.
right? So they would kind of pay for broadcast television by making us watch commercials. And that was a format that we were okay with.
Yes.
Largely because we didn't know any better. Kids today are not okay with that. Hulu, you pay for Hulu, and then you have to watch ads, and you can't fast forward through them. And the ads are higher quality than the garbage stream quality of their
Content.
content,
Right.
and it really pisses some people off.
Right.
They're like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't fast forward. And now the ads have grown in length.
Right.
Like, they started as 15 seconds, and now they're like getting like these 2-minute ads that
Oh
are
my God,
running. Yeah,
horrible,
it's
yeah.
brutal for
Yeah.
these kids
Right.
who just don't dig. Right. Another thing that's really bizarre to them is paying for cable television.
Right.
Like, what are you, crazy?
Yep. Yeah.
$80 a month for TV? Are you out of your mind?
Well, I'd like to know who's only paying $80 now too.
Right, yeah, right. But to them, especially to somebody who's, say, freshly entering college, the idea is
Right.
ludicrous.
Right.
And this is where I think the traditional cable companies are just absolutely blockbustering. They're just blowing it.
Right. They're going to lose all this new crop of millennials.
And they're doing it hostily by trying to kill net neutrality, so that basically what that says is basically if they get away with it, the cable companies are going to make it so that if you want to go to YouTube, you're going to have to pay $5 a month to them.
Yeah.
In order to get it at a reasonable speed.
Right,
If
so
you're going to want to go
these-
to this
right.
site, you got to pay this much.
Yeah.
It's enough to
There'll be an
rage-inducing.
overthrow of something
And so instead of capitalizing on
on
what it-
behavior and on platforms. there.
absolutely, and getting in there and just being part of the culture. Right.
Right. So getting back, because I know I keep interrupting you because you have so many interesting insights about this space. So people are watching Twitch TV and then they're copying other people's conversations.
I didn't answer your copy
Yeah,
pasta.
because it freaks me out.
No, this is wild, and you know what? I have to. This is going to be hard to explain. I'm going to have to actually show you. But
Yeah.
so all right. Let's kind of rewind. I'm sorry if we're being tangential here. Let's rewind to.
But we're very
back,
young.
Back
We're
to what I
young,
said.
and
That's why. It's
Yeah.
because we're 4 and we have low attention.
That's right.
So let's go back to what I said about there's
Mm-hmm.
so there's a famous streamer, and what I mean by famous, he's got 26,000 people
Right.
watching him right now,
Yeah.
watching him play, and he's explaining what he's doing and why.
Right.
Typically, he either is really good at the game, or she has big hooters. It's a lot of
Yeah.
cleavage and
Yeah.
a lot, and
Makes
and
the
stuff
world
like-
go round.
It really does. And by the way, this is an amazing phenomenon. We're talking about a kid in their college dorm with posters behind them, broadcasting a television show on their laptop or whatever it is. that they
Right.
do. It's
right.
incredible
To the world.
I mean, to the world
with millions of people
with
watching.
reach and frequency. I mean,
Right.
we're talking about this is amazing.
Right.
This is amazing.
And it's happening right now.
It's happening right now. And,
Okay.
and to give them credit, it is not easy to set up.
Right.
All right. Now, there are tutorials on how to do it and whatnot, but, these guys choose encoding, video codecs. They choose bit rates and frame rates, and
Right.
they're
So it's
actually
sophisticated.
streaming. Hell
It's-
yeah.
yeah,
Like,
it's
this is
sophisticated.
amazing,
Right.
right? All right. So while these 26,000 people are watching, there is actually 26,000 people in a chat window talking shit.
About what they're seeing?
About what they're seeing.
Okay.
And in order to, now it's scrolling so fast that if you try to say hi, how you doing? It's gone. Boom. It's history.
Right.
So there's this really weird phenomenon of what we call the meta. Okay. The meta is the current state of things, right? Meta is typically been thought of as metadata, which means hidden data. But meta, just think of it as the current state of things, the current pulse of the community, right? The way to tell that is there are these really weird snippets, like a paragraph that is totally bizarre, that says like, hi, let's say the guy's name is Billy Bob 17. Hi, Billy Bob 17. I'm a pizza delivery guy, and I think my wife is cheating on me.
Oh my gosh.
But my car broke down and I can't deliver pizzas. What should I do? That's, by the way, just some totally random, bizarre, and you will see that pasted over and over and over and over
in the
and
chat
over
window.
again in the chat window.
While this other kid's broadcasting
just
his
this
gameplay.
really bizarre paragraph of
Right.
like almost
Inane.
contextually irrelevant stuff.
And then people are commenting on it?
Well, no. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it's for.
Okay. Just glad you said that.
Just so you
'cause
know,
it's
it's
so
okay. And by the
strange.
way, I don't think they are either.
And it's called copy pasta.
Well, copy pasta is just
behavior.
is just another term for copying and pasting.
Right, but I love that it's called that because everything food related makes me happy.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So I could talk to you forever because we have like another few minutes, but I wanted to ask you. It goes fast because there's so many interesting things to talk about. You know, VR and sort of the background.
Yeah, we
to
have a
all
lot
this.
to discuss.
So my question to you is, where are you really getting fed all of your new ideas and new thinking? Like, is there something that you read every day besides Reddit, like other sites you go to that our audience may want to dig into?
You know what? It's actually most like I've got my bros in Silicon Valley that are hardcore, the real deal innovators that are doing stuff you've never heard of and stuff you wouldn't believe. I've got our sister company, Sci Futures, which I know you already talked to Ari Popper.
Yes.
And Scott Suskind, I think you met that guy.
We happen to be married.
Oh, right. So you're very familiar with each other.
Yeah.
So
people, your community feeds you.
correct.
And you
I have
feed
my
them.
peers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We all, we discuss this stuff. And another thing I wanted to touch on really quickly is just when the bottom fell out of the aerospace industry here in California, it gave rise to a lot of internet development. Right? These were amazing engineers
Who had nothing to do.
were
Rocket
basically,
scientists, basically.
literally,
Yeah.
like quite literally rocket scientists.
Right.
All of those guys that were radio engineers are now totally back in business with the advent of the Internet of Things.
Oh, so now all these engineers
Got all
are
these
moving into
white-haired dudes that were just absolute badasses in the late 80s and and before.
How interesting. So,
that are
okay.
I mean that are the kind of guys that you talk to, they look at you and you're like, oh, I'm stupid. Like they're
Right.
so smart.
That deep engineering
Hardcore engineers.
now being applied to this front end that we are all going to be using in a really, that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
There's this
So
resurgence, and they're invaluable resources. These
So it's
guys.
not 12-year-old entrepreneurs.
No,
it's like serious
It's
engineers.
literally 59-year-old radio
Wow,
engineers.
that's
and
so
stuff. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a whole new
It's a whole
spin
new
on
trip,
this.
yeah.
And then, you think you've kind of mentioned this before, but that brands and companies and businesses are going to be surrounding all of this, trying to figure out how to navigate it all.
That's right. Like, so just think about Nest, for instance, right? You've got this thing in your house, which is basically a predictive temperature adjustment mechanism.
Yes, right.
But it's also it's gathering information about you. Now, just imagine if that knew it was connected to your front door lock and your DVR and your washing machine, and it knew that when you walked out the door and there was no one else in the house, to turn everything off, to run the dishwasher and make sure the door was locked because you left.
So it's going to be tied to behaviors.
Sure, that's
There'll
just
be,
one aspect.
There'll
right?
be electricity savings. There'll be all sorts of benefits from the data that we learn from consumer behavior.
Now imagine that every item out there was was a receiver and a transmitter. Okay, now we've got what's called a network mesh. Okay, so imagine if every component that we carry around, which by the way I've got a two-way internet radio in my pocket right now.
Yeah. And
as
I'm just
we all
happy to
do.
see you.
Right there we go. But now imagine if every door handle and every light switch
Everything was-
extended our
right.
network of things
Right.
that we could transmit data along. Then all of a sudden, it's all wireless, right? And then all of a sudden, like these cables and having things, if I wanted to piggyback on my network or send a message, I could do it without even the internet. If you think about it, I could just kind of send it through
all this
light
other
switches
stuff.
and traffic lights and.
You're not going to need a browser anymore. It's just going to all be.
I mean, the ramifications are huge.
Right.
I mean,
do you see this
huge.
exploding in the next few years, especially if you
question.
have these real people behind, like these engineers who have worked in infrastructure all their lives?
Just think about things like, replacement of, say, your water bottle and your Airhead water bottle or your Sparkletts water bottle. They spend a lot of money driving trucks around and dropping off to everyone who's a subscriber.
Right.
Right. Imagine if you just got one bottle every time you were empty.
So
it actually saved them billions
sends a
of dollars.
message. It sends them a message.
If there was a little sensor that went off that said, okay.
I think we do all want that. I think we want that.
No question.
I mean, some things I don't want everyone to know, but some things help your life. So.
Well, I think that's going to be the big question here.
How much privacy, how much data?
Is managing privacy, especially for kids. I mean, could you imagine? I feel bad for the younger generation that everything they've ever done is like kind of documented on Facebook. Could you imagine all the like horrible mistakes that we made?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot with my kid because her whole life is on there, and later she's going to hate me for it. But she's going to hate me anyway. So
what are you going to do?
Right. So before we sign off with Dayvid, our fabulous designing entrepreneur, and you really are the quintessential entrepreneur because you have your hands in everything kind of new and interesting. What should we be looking out for from the Ghost Agency? What's coming down the pike from you?
So, well, we're working with Sci Futures on some stuff for Lowe's. It's actually a holodeck, an in-store holodeck, which is probably the most exciting thing that we're doing, where you actually get to design your own area and then experience it as an area that you can walk around in. And I'm hoping to implement some virtual reality into that.
Great.
And that's extending to a bunch of stuff I can't talk about that you can expect. We'll talk about next time.
I have one last question for you. Do you think that everyone will have a VR headset in their home in the next couple of years? Will that be something that everybody has?
I think everyone who wants one will have one.
But will it be like 3D TV where it didn't really happen? Or
No. So, no, absolutely not. It's a different deal. Think of it more like headphones for your eyes.
Okay, so more common, more everyday.
Right? So it's antisocial. Yeah, there's a kind of blocking out the rest of the world element to it, but there's also an immersive element to it.
Right.
And then think about that and imagine what it would be like to experience, say, anything, right? Put a 360-degree camera on the top of a pyramid or in the middle of the Louvre or
anywhere, anything.
On the International Space Station or the Mars Curiosity rover. Or
I mean, I totally get now why you say I don't want to sleep anymore because there's so much to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, we have to wrap it up here at the Tech Cat Show this week with the fabulous Dayvid Iannaci. What's your Twitter handle so people can learn about you?
It's I am Dayvid.
I am Dayvid, but
Dayvid.
That's right, Dayvid.
Hippie parents, not my fault.
So check out Dayvid's stuff. Always new and interesting things. He'll come back again because he's always got his hands on the latest pulse. Thanks so much for joining us here in Hollywood at the Tech Cat Show, and we'll see you in a week where we dive into more technology trends impacting your business. Thank you. I'm Lori Schwartz. Have a great day.
Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.